Welcome to Everyday Light. I'm excited to bring you a timely practice as we are starting our new year. One of my very favorite things to do as I start the new year is to really reflect back on the previous year and look at God's faithfulness. Look at the ways that I have seen Him work and move, the ways that He has been directing me throughout the year. And so I want to make this really practical for you to be able to do in your own life. And so I'm going to provide a link in this video and podcast to my blog. And in that, there will be a free printable of a reflection exercise that you can do on your own and look back. Now, this is easy for me because I journal, and journaling is one of those spiritual disciplines that I'm really excited, probably tomorrow, to post a video on my particular journaling technique that I learned from my mentor, Margie Harriman, several years ago, many years ago now, probably. It's probably been 13 or 14 years that I've learned this technique, and I love it, and I will bring it to you, but I'm going to set that aside for the moment. But it's helpful to me to look back over my journaling. And so that's what I do is in the start of the new year, I actually read through every page of my journaling, every page of my disciplines that I've practiced, whatever that is, I take time and I reread it. And that has increased my faith more than anything that I have ever done. The first year that I did that, because I journaled for many years without ever taking time to stop and look back and reread. And so the fruit of that was somewhat limited, even though journaling was a good exercise and it was a way for me to have a way to output all that was being input in me. And even just that mechanism of writing was really helpful for me to be able to process and learn. But until I began to look back once a year, I didn't see how much God was working and moving in my life. So before you turn off the video, let's say that you don't journal, because most people don't, and it's okay. That's fine if you don't journal, but I still do want to teach you about it. But what you can do to practice this exercise, if you don't journal, is to literally just take your calendar, whatever date book, Google Calendar, whatever you might use, anything else that you might scribble notes on about what your activities have been like, just to be able to jog your memory. And the best thing for reflection is to just really set aside a bit of time. For me, because I have kids, I like to set an alarm. I'm not really a morning person, but get up extra early in the morning, make myself a cup of coffee, and just give myself that quiet time to be able to sit and be undisturbed and just read and reflect. And again, if you don't have things to read, just start that time with prayer. Just really ask Jesus to bring to mind those things from the past year that He would want you to remember. This is not all about your work, how well you are remembering. You're really trusting the Spirit to bring to mind those things that He would have you to focus on, that He wants to teach you in this. And so in the worksheet that's on the blog, you're going to have some different sections to fill in. And again, not requirement, okay? Opportunity. As a type A person, I like to take whatever worksheet I'm given and to get an A on it, right? Like I like to fill it out correctly. I want it to be done right. So really take what works and what is life-giving and leave the rest. With anything that I give to you from now on, any resource, just use it as an opportunity, but not as a requirement. So the categories are prayers answered. I'm just going to run through each and just talk about them. It's so helpful to look back. So often we pray about things and we forget how God has answered, when He's answered, how He has answered. So really just taking that time to either think about or look in a prayer journal and review those things and just jot them down as a just a testimony to the Lord's goodness. There's another section about themes that he has been teaching me about. I don't know about you, but I trust that it is true in your life too, because I think this is just a work of the Spirit, that there tend to be certain things and seasons of my life that are coming up over and over and over again. I had a season where it was all about obedience. What does it look like to be obedient to God? What does it look like to put into practice the things that are mentioned in his word? Other times it was fear of the Lord. It was breaking free from fear of man. There have been so many themes, and there are every year for me. This year, you've already heard it in my speech, but it's been a theme of freedom, of really experiencing the Spirit's leading and guiding. So whatever those themes are, just jot them down to remember them. I'm looking back at a sheet that I made up in 2014. And so because I am type A, once I'm all done, I then laminate it and I stick it in the front of my journal. And it's such a great resource because I don't have to read through my whole journal again. I can just look at my pages and remember what God was doing in my life at that point in time. So just to give you an example, this was a time of fear of the Lord for me, really learning what that meant. And also joy, finding joy in the work that God gave me, because this was when my kids were younger, a lot of the day-to-day things felt like a grind. And so that was something that just over and over again, that theme was reemerging for me. There's another section that is God's clear direction or redirection of my course this year, or of my journey. There are times that are those crossroads moments, and it is so helpful to see what those points were, which path did we choose, and how did God guide us down that path. For me in this season, it was teaching a Titus study. This was back in 2014 again, but it was teaching that journaling technique, for example, that I learned from Margie, and other aspects in that time. Another section is miracles I must remember, even the little ones. So those moments where God just, we might say, in our way of speaking, shows up. Okay. We know he's always there, but there are those moments that it's just, so eye-opening, mind-blowing, the way that he just intercedes or shows up again with the answered prayer, literal miracles that we have seen, but also really paying attention to those little things that we might forget over time. I have a section that is just big events that happened this year. Sometimes it's just helpful to be able to look back and say, oh yeah, that was when we went on that trip, or, oh boy, we're not going to forget this, but this was the pandemic, right? This was when I had COVID, or this was when, whatever happened, in my life. This was the year I started that 1-year Bible reading, whatever it is. Those are the big events for the year. And then primary topics of confession. If you have there's just something that's been coming up in your life a lot that you feel that the Lord would have you to change, or desire to change within you, because really it's not in our power to change those things. Just look at those things and be honest, and even emotionally honest about what are those things as we close the year? What are those roadblocks that we've been struggling with? And not only identifying what that is, because sometimes we can stay there and we can just sit there and feel shameful about whatever those things are, which is definitely not the Lord's desire for us. But to then draw an arrow from whatever that thing is to what he would guide us into instead. So if we've been struggling with pride, that arrow would go toward humility, and maybe even jot down some thoughts about what that might look like. Thank you this year, Lord, for. So just a point of gratitude. This is a new section of gratitude. What are those things that we should just really praise the Lord for in our lives? There's a section that is prayers not yet answered. So continue intercession for those things this year. Just to, as we start our new year, recognize those primary points of prayer that we want to be faithful to bring before the Lord. And I know that can be a struggle for me, which is why that section is there, just to remind me of how God is calling me to pray and intercede for certain situations or people in the new year. And finally, there's a section that is the Lord's goals for me this year. And this is a time, again, just to really sit with Jesus, to inquire of him, because we can come up with all sorts of New Year's resolutions and self-transforming ideas. And I just so want to encourage you that this is not your work. This is not striving harder to get where you think you need to be. It is really sitting with Jesus, receiving his love, receiving his acceptance, and just asking him, Lord, what would you have me to do? Where are you calling me? Could you show me, are there any concrete things that I need to be doing in the new year to draw closer to you, to understand your love better, and to love the people you've given me to love better? And again, that's not so much of a doing sometimes. Sometimes that is an answer of, you need to rest, child. You just take the opportunity to have more freedom in your life. Create space, create margin for rest. And again, just an encouragement that it is not our striving that accomplishes transformation. It is the Lord himself. And I think this year, so I will add it to my pages for you, were great verses. You know, I get those verses that kept coming up, or as you were studying, as you know, if you've been reading through the 1 year Bible reading with me, you know, either in the ending devotionals or in the scriptures themselves, were there any verses that just really stood out to you in conviction, in encouragement, in direction, to have the opportunity to write those down and to carry them with you as you go into the new year? So my prayer is that you will carve out some time, even if it's just 30 minutes because you haven't journaled, and you're just going to look back through your calendar and sit in prayer and jot down those things that you remember. I promise you, you will be blessed to do this. I love you all. Have a wonderful day.